with hello and welcome to Awakening the New Earth with Eloise Bennett and myself, Ashley Lugg. And this week we're going to be talking about crystal skulls. So,
Hi, everybody.
so with Eloise and I have worked with crystal skulls for many years. So, thought it'd be great if we could just maybe share a little bit about our own personal journeys with the crystal skulls and what you know about them, and I'll share a little bit as well. So if I hand it over to you, Al, would you like to share a little bit about what you know crystal skulls?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. I'll start at the beginning of the journey where I think it was about 2005. I'd been working at the Diana Cooper School teaching angels and ascension. And Diana then brought out the book Discover Atlantis, and we were working through the book and creating the new course. And she mentioned crystal skulls. And at first I thought crystal skulls, I've only seen them on, on the telly on films, and they looked a little bit spooky. I wasn't sure if that was my thing after working with angels, but it was part of the curriculum to teach about crystal skulls. So I thought, well, if I'm teaching about crystal skulls, I need to learn about them. So dubiously, I got in touch with a crystal skull guardian and I thought I wanted a rose quartz skull because I thought that would be loving. And, the skull shape was sort of making me a little bit unnerved at first. So I contacted Kathleen and I ordered my crystal skull online, and her name was Shah Ra, and she was a beautiful pink crystal skull. And in fact, it wasn't even online, it was a telephone in those days. So I called her up and I asked, did she have any pink crystal skulls? And she said, oh, I have a few. How are we going to do this? Because it wasn't like you were taking a screenshot on your phone. I
Yeah.
said, I'll tune in. So I tuned in telepathically to these six crystal skulls. And she said, I'll bring them up to the phone. And she brought the third one to the phone. And I immediately knew that Shah Ra was for me. And she shipped her to me. And when she arrived, the funniest thing was that the bag, when it arrived, my cat Gizmo at the time, Gizmo Osiris, started ripping the bag open. And I thought that he was ripping the bag open because it was my herbs or something like that. When he ripped the bag open, it was Shara, my crystal skull. And he was just rubbing himself about next to
Wow.
Shara and purring. So
Wow.
I then, all my fears, he was doing it because he was like a familiar in a way. All my fears related to working with crystal skulls just left me. Because if it was safe for Gizmo, then I knew that it was safe for me.
Yeah.
And then Shara asked me to go to Tesco's and buy some yellow flowers, and she wanted to be put in this grid of yellow flowers. I thought, this is weird, what this is about. So I put her in this grid of yellow flowers, and I started to work with her and develop my connection to this first crystal skull. And then I went on a workshop with Edwin Courtney, and it was a crystal skull workshop. And Edwin said the same thing, that his crystal skulls they would enjoy being placed in flowers. So that was my first experience of going from being scared about what on earth are crystal skulls, they're so different to angel and ascension, to really loving Shah Ra, my first pink rose quartz. And I'm no longer a custodian of her. I've had so many crystal skulls over the years, and she was gifted to one of my students. So I'm now mainly working with SETI, who we'll talk about a bit later on. So that was my introduction to crystal skulls in 2005. And there's been so many adventures since. So I'd love to hear some of your adventures, Ashley.
Well, my first real connection to a crystal skull, I guess I was maybe 18, so quite young. Um, and the first skull I ever met was called Tekma, and he was a blue Siberian quartz, and he was deep blue, deep blue. So, if you see him from a distance, it looked like, black. It was only when
Wow.
you sort of picked him up, and he was a full size skull.
Wow.
Um, and I was kind of just, I'd always collected crystals, didn't really know a lot about them at that point, but I'd always sort of collected them. Um, anyway, the person who was the guardian of this skull said, you can, go on into my house and, you can put your hands on him, and if he wants to work, he'll work. So, being brave and everything, I went in, and it was like my spine become jelly. It
Wow.
just literally felt like my spine just wasn't solid anymore. It was just like melting.
Wow.
I'd never had that experience before or again after, actually. Um, but also a very powerful voice that was coming through. And it was like, whoa, this is interesting. Um, and then I got myself a little crystal skull, and he's traveled everywhere with me. Went on to join the Marines, and he came with me in the Marines.
Wow.
Um, and it was interesting because even when I was on deployment, I would leave him behind,
Mhm.
but he would come in dream time or he would come in waking time,
Wow.
so I might be, sat reading a book, on the side of the Euphrates River, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'd have this sort of crystal skull in my third eye,
Wow.
and he would be speaking, he'd be talking to me and sharing information that with me. So that was like really how I started getting into crystal skulls. And then I become a custodian of
Mm.
many.
Mm.
And anybody out there who works with crystal skulls will probably share the same
Yeah.
experience. You get one, and it's almost like in the ether they sort of shout to their friends, "Hey,
Yeah.
this guy's a guardian." So
Yeah.
everywhere you go, crystal skulls pop up, and they sort of shout. You go, "Oh, take me home, take me home." And of course, crystal skulls come in varying shapes and forms.
Mm.
Um, and I find in the West, we've got this opinion about the shape of a skull.
Yeah.
Um,
Very important.
but we miss the significance. We forget that our ancestors used to carry the bones of
Yeah.
our ancestors around.
Yeah.
And why did they do that?
Yeah.
When you start looking into it, you realize that the shape and everything, and holding that, maybe it was a skull of an old leader,
Mm.
you can connect with their energy, their soul light, I guess, or their, that the spirit of what that being was.
Yeah.
Now, the crystal skulls, um, just stop me if you want to, Al, because I'm going to sort of
No,
go
no,
into a bit of
I'm
the
loving
story.
this. What came to my mind when you were saying about that was in Mount Athos, right? And they keep all the skulls of the amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. No, carry on. I'm
All the
enjoying it.
saints.
Yeah, all the
Um,
saints. Yeah,
um, But with the crystal skulls, the legend is, there was 12 crystal skulls, back in the time of Atlantis, well, 13 actually.
yeah,
But when the 12 are gathered, the 13th will appear, and that's the legend of
yeah,
the ancient skulls. Most people have heard of the Mitchell Hedges skull.
yeah,
That was a skull that was found, pure quartz, detachable jaw, um, and scientifically shouldn't exist.
yeah. I love that story with Anna. I think that
Yeah,
I love that story about Anna when she found it on her birthday. I think, didn't
yeah,
she?
it
She
was,
was
yeah.
lowered down, and I just think, yeah, that must have been amazing for her to find that crystal skull.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's lots of ancient skulls,
Yeah.
but of course you can't really carbon date crystal, so
No.
we don't know how old they are. But what we can do is look at the tooling marks under a microscope,
Yeah.
to see how they were formed. And that was the thing with the Mitchell Hedges skull, got passed around all the universities around the world, and they can't find the tooling marks, so it was, even under microscope, it shouldn't exist.
Yeah. Is it a singing skull? Does its skull move?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it's detachable jaw. So it's what you would
Yeah.
call a singing skull.
Yeah.
Now, in my career, I've studied remote viewing,
Mm.
um, and practiced remote viewing. And I was actually shown a way to work with the skulls. And it is energetically, literally putting the skull on, and
Wow.
that gave me access to the skull consciousness, right? So,
Yeah.
and I did this, and they shared with me why it was important to
Mm.
have this perfectly clear quartz skull, which the Mitchell Hedges is perfectly
Yeah.
clear, flawless. And they said, well, what it is was if you wanted to download somebody's consciousness
Mm.
into the skull so you can have communion with them, even when they're not in the room, but you
Mm.
can actually call on their higher self or call on them, and they could bring their consciousness and put the consciousness into that skull,
Mm.
and then they can work that way. So
Yeah.
that's why it's important, and skulls come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. there's nice carvings, and then there's what I call like the monkey faces, really
Yeah.
sort of flat, blocky faces, and that's not my preference, but
Mm,
I kind of like the more real looking skulls.
mm,
Um, but again, I think intention and everything plays a big part in this.
yeah.
And I'll show you a couple of the skulls I've got with me here now, just to show you the variation. So this is a little, well, I'll say little. It's a
Oh, it's lovely. Love.
pyrite skull, but
Wow.
nice carve. Um, and he's a really cool dude. Um, and then you can get skulls like this, which on the back
Oh,
of him, he's got a nice
wow.
druzy quartz, but then
Lovely.
on the front, he's got, he's a nice skull. So skulls come in varying shapes, but also what you see a lot more now is things like this, dragon skull.
Love it. Beautiful.
So this is agate dragon, little druzy
Beautiful.
amethyst in there, which is wonderful. Um, and then we've got these types of skulls. So star beings,
Oh, I love them. Yeah. Beautiful.
like little star beings. And again, they come in different shapes and sizes. You can get all these different star beings. And what I love about about working, oh, I've got to show you this guy. Um,
Oh my gosh, he's amazing.
this
Wow.
one's Quantum Quattro.
Wow.
And when he came from the States, and telepathically, he was telling me the whole journey. I knew when he was collected from the woman I bought him from. I
Wow.
knew he went in a brown UPS van. I knew when he was at the warehouse. I knew when he was put in transport across the sea. I knew when he
Wow.
was brought to Stroud, where I was living,
Yeah.
because it was in constant communication.
Amazing. Love it.
And he told the person who sold him to me that he was going to a house of ease.
Wow.
And I got in, and then I moved into a house where I've got my two sons, which is um, both have first names begin with E, and the
Yeah.
person's house I moved into
Yeah.
began with the letter E as well. So,
Goodness.
and that was he knew before I knew that I was moving.
Wow. That is incredible.
I mean, skulls are incredible, but the importance of the shapes. I mean, you get all these different star beings and elvings and all
Oh,
that sort
that's
of.
a beautiful one. Wow. That is really lovely.
Yeah, nice little
Yeah.
lapis.
That is.
Um, and this one was Judy Hall's. This one here. That's
Oh,
a lovely
lovely.
little peach adventurine.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously, when I work with crystal skulls, if I'm working with human consciousness, it's great working with the normal skulls. If I
Mm,
want to go a little bit more galactic, I would work with the galactic skulls. If I want to work with dragons, I work with my dragon skulls.
love it.
So it's a wonderful um, experience to be able to just play. And
Mm,
this is what I think our time is really about now, is kind of just expanding our consciousness. I'm not saying this is the way, this is
mm,
just another way of
mm.
increasing our light quota. It's increasing our knowledge base, and with the knowledge comes the wisdom. You
Yeah.
experience these things, you experience having, you go on a skull workshop, and I can guarantee you will change.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I'm sure you've had the similar experience. I mean, I've run skull workshops where, you know, people will come in, and when it comes to the healing side of it,
Mm,
say, right, everybody get in a circle. We're going to put the, main skull in the middle, and he's going to do some healing for us all. And
yeah.
then two or three people have to get up and leave
Yeah. It's too
because
intense.
it's too intense, or the skull is saying, no, you're not ready for this, or
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
energy is going to bring up something, maybe not so beneficial for them. And they
Yeah.
just get that uncomfortable feeling and say, actually, I'm going to sit this one out.
Mm,
But
mm.
skulls are wisdom keepers, and they
Yeah.
tap into a collective consciousness. And that is what we have access to through the skulls. Because not only, so for instance, you've got this lovely lapis skull, but not only are you obviously tapping into the crystalline energy of lapis lazuli, but you're
Yeah.
also tapping into this consciousness field,
Yes.
the collective consciousness field. So when I tap into and work with the crystal skulls, I'm tapping into a collective and they
Mm.
all have their own personality.
Yeah.
And people sort of, I know people who are complete sort of non-believers in any of this, and that's fine. But then I say, well, just come and have a play, and they can have an experience themselves, and then they're sort of, oh, okay, now I'm on the fence,
Yeah.
and then it's like, well, have another play, and they're like, yeah, they're sold. Can I buy that crystal skull off you? Because it just told me this, and you're like, yeah, of course, whatever. But
Yeah.
it's play, and I think
Yeah.
that's the frequency that I want to transmit to anybody that's watching today. It's, have fun with this, do
Yeah.
it with reverence because there is a collective wisdom behind all of this. And it can really help because some of the skulls are wisdom keepers that just want to
Mm.
share lots of knowledge and wisdom about maybe ancient technologies, maybe it's ancient civilizations, maybe it's star civilizations. Other skulls are really powerful healers.
Mm.
So it depends on what skull comes to you, but it'd be the right skull for you.
Amazing, amazing. And that's what I love when we do workshops together, Ashley, is how you help people or we help people to connect to their crystal skull, to find its name, to find what planet it's working with, what's its purpose in their life, and how to connect to that knowledge and wisdom and the libraries of light that that particular crystal skull, the consciousness of that crystal skull holds. And that's what I love is when you lead those meditations in class and people can access that. I think it's wonderful.
And that's what the skulls give me. I mean, I remember we was teaching out in Pembrokeshire in Wales,
Mm.
and as I was crossing the Severn Bridge, I've got the Skull Collective talking to me, downloading this meditation that I've got to take the class through,
Yeah,
in 2 days' time. They're like, this
amazing.
has to be shared,
Yeah.
accessing these sort of light libraries and things. And, as always, just stay open. Don't fix yourself that,
Mm,
oh, I should be feeling this because Ashley said that.
mm,
It's like,
mm,
no, we are all attuning ourselves. We all have our own vibration, our own uniqueness. So every tool that we use, and the skulls, like a crystal, is a tool.
mm.
But I find working with skulls, crystal skulls, a lot. Uh, yeah, I'd say it's a more powerful experience for me
Yeah,
working
yeah.
with the skulls because working with crystals, yes, they may have an overlighting consciousness working with it.
Mm,
Skulls, they will talk.
yeah.
Um,
I love that about them.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
it could be a love-hate relationship
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Because I don't mean hate, but
No,
I've had it where skulls get so chatty,
yeah,
and I literally have to put them in a plastic box and sort of like, no, you've got to quieten down. I've got a life to live.
yeah.
You
I
know,
think you had to do that when Alethea came to stay with you when I went to live in Cyprus, didn't you? Because
yeah,
she was very chatty, wasn't she?
yeah, she was.
Yeah,
So I was being custodian for her, and she was just. And I'm saying, sort of, come on, I've got to go to bed, and I've got to get up, and I've got, you know, 3D stuff I've got to get on with,
yeah,
and I can't be working in these higher realms all the time and
yeah,
still function on the 3D realm. So,
yeah,
yeah, it's good fun, and we've had some great experiences on the courses that we've run, and
definitely.
there's been some fantastic insights that come, and it's yeah, and I love working with the dragon energies as well.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm very connected with the earth energies, as you know,
yeah.
and the dragon lines. And when you work with the dragon skulls, it's very powerful.
Yeah, it's amazing. I just love it. And it's like when I think about how scared I was in the beginning, Ashley, when I first had to work with the crystal skull, because I'd only ever worked with sort of angels and ascension and fairies. And then how my life totally changed by having being open and just working with, Shara in the beginning, that little beautiful pink crystal skull. And then, like you said, she attracted loads of friends in. Everywhere I went, I'd be in a crystal skull shop and someone would be wanting to talk to me. And I think then when I went to Mount Shasta was where I met Seti, and I
Yeah,
thought I don't need another crystal skull. And he was really communicating with me, and I left the shop and I went down to maybe a cafe or to the bookshop, and I could just hear him. He was saying, you really do need to buy me. And I went back, and he's a really, really interesting skull because he's almost like my dongle,
Yeah.
because he goes wherever I travel. He's easy to travel, and he picks up the keys and codes. And then I bring him home to almost like the hard drive, which is Alethea, who is nearly, full size skull. And once I had SETI and I started to work with SETI, then that's when the crystal skull consciousness really started to connect. And maybe that's because he's clear quartz, and
Yeah.
maybe I felt more at home and he had that connection to Mount Shasta. But it was interesting because I then came to Glastonbury. It was before I lived in Glastonbury, and I went into the crystal shop. And my friend Matt in there said, I'm not showing you this crystal skull because I want you to buy it. I'm showing you it because I know you have an appreciation for crystal skulls. And that's when I met Elithia. And I picked her up and I thought, wow. No, instantly I knew I wanted her. But she was very expensive. I think she was advertised for nearly £2,000. I thought, oh, well, that's ridiculous. We're not going to be buying her today, you know. And I spoke to Matt and I said, oh, I'll go up to the Chalice Well and I'll meditate. I only got to the top of the high street, and Alethea was streaming to me, and she said, you need to come back for me. You need to come and pick me up. So I went back and I said to Matt, can you do me a discount? And he managed to do a discount for me. And that's really when my journey with the crystal skulls started, because I took her to the Chalice Well, I cleansed her there, and I asked that she be a channel for the light. And she started talking to me and bringing in information. She said I'd be working with the crystal skulls and teaching about them. And at that time, I didn't really think I would, not to the extent that we've done now, but everything was journaled. And then strange things started to happen because this was going back all those years ago. You didn't really have, there were websites and emails and things, but I wasn't really connected in that way with social media and things like that. And I got this email from Joshua, the Crystal Skull Explorer, this famous author. And he was like, hey, I'm coming to Wales and I'd like to invite you to our elders meeting. And I thought, how does he even know who I am? How? I had no idea because I didn't have a website. Nowhere was it written I was working with crystal skulls. It was Alethea. She'd been talking to his crystal skulls, and I went along to this meeting and I was with some of the other elders, and they were activating crystal skulls, and you could come up and have your crystal skull activated. And I thought, I think mine's already active because it's
Yeah.
pretty talkative. But at that time, they thought, well, not Joshua, but the lady that's working with him thought that they were the only people that could activate them. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be in my ego and think it's not activated. I'll take it along. So I took Alethea along, and they were like, whoa. She's very talkative and she's already activated. And that was then when Yeshua came to, not Yeshua,
Joshua.
Joshua, he's probably got Yeshua working with him, came to me and said, you really should be doing this work. And I was like, I'm too scared. I don't want to be doing this work. I'm too scared. I don't like public teaching and, talking. And he said, you must take this forward. So I thought, okay, I hear you. And then I went to see my crystal master teacher, Philip, in St. Albans, and he said the same. And then there was one other person that said, you've really got to start teaching. So I thought I have to get over my fears in order to
Yeah.
start teaching this work. But Alethea really helped me because she kept sending me all these people that were crystal skull teachers, like, the elk woman. And then I went to Sedona with a friend of mine, Sue Palmer, and we had an amazing trip. Sue arranged everything. We end up getting to the on reading Jaap van Enten's book on crystal skulls. We arrive at the Dreamweaver Airbnb, and it only turns out that that guy that owned it was best mates with Jaap. I mean, how does that even happen? Again, that's Alethea up to her
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah.
And I said to the guy, he saw Yap's book and he was like, wow, that's my friend, and it says that Yap was from Holland, not Sedona.
Yeah.
And so he said, you never guess what? He's having a crystal skull meditation tonight. Do you want to go? And I said, oh my God, I'm so sort of like jet lagged because I'd been, in the air for however many hours, 13 hours. I said, but I'd love to meet him sometime during our 2 week stay. He said, go and give him a call. And I was like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't. He said, no, you must. You've got to go and give him a call. So I went and called this guy thinking, I'm so embarrassed. I'm calling Yap. This is, I can't just call this famous author up. And I called him and I said, hi, I was really shy. Hi, Yap. I said, I'm staying at the Dreamweavers Airbnb, and your friend said that you're working with the Crystal Skulls and you've got some work going on. I can't come tonight, but is there any other opportunity? And he said, sure. He said, would you like to go to the Crystal Skull portal out on the, out in the rocks? I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to. So me and my friend Sue Palmer were climbing up this rainbow, I call it the Rainbow Bridge of Light, to the Crystal Skull portal where all the indigenous tribes were, with a freaking rucksack full of our heavy, crystal skulls. I didn't have a leafy. I just had three like mini crystal skulls. SETI was one of them. And we sat there on the crystal skull portal with Yap's crystal skulls. And as you know, Ashley, they transfer,
Yeah,
it's like doing an airdrop, isn't it, on
yeah,
your iPhone? And the crystal skulls will send their information. So my little crystal skulls all got activated with Yap's crystal skull consciousness, and Yap's had been with not Yeshua, Joshua's, and Joshua's has been with the Mitchell Hedges. So of course, all of the crystal skull download came into lovely little SETI. And of course, he's been hanging out with your crystal skulls as well. So they've shared their keys and codes. But it was an amazing journey. And I have to say, although I don't teach so often about crystal skulls now, it's one of my favorite things to do. And I learn so much for them. I meet wonderful, wonderful people, and they really make spiritual work fun, don't they? It's
they
really,
do.
really fun. And they are amazing beings. I mean, we teach channeling courses, don't we, Ashley, where you can teach people to channel angels and ascended masters. And they're really helpful in channeling that information as well, because they are conduits for
Yeah,
higher information. And I think it's important, like you always say, Ashley, to discern and ensure that they're only bringing in, information of the light. But they can be so helpful with your grid work when you're doing earth healing, healing your physical body, meditating. If you sit with your crystal skull, you'll just glean so much information and so much support. And yeah, I've absolutely loved the journey that I've been on. And like you, Ashley, it's well over 20 years now. I think you've been working a bit longer than me. But I love it. And I love it when we come together online to teach about it, but particularly in person when everyone brings their crystal skulls to the event. And I'm super excited about our next event that we're going to be doing. And would you like to share a little bit about what people might experience on our next Crystal Skull event, Ashley?
yeah. I mean, well, first and foremost, anybody who's got a skull, I mean, they hear us talking about our skulls personally, and we've got names and everything, but not all of my skulls have come forward with a name. And I
Mm,
know there's some skulls I've got in my collection, which I'm literally just a custodian until
mhm.
that person comes along where I go, that's for you.
Yeah.
So sometimes we are literally just custodians. Um, and the names that, I'm not really too attached to names, but sometimes they will, really project that.
Mm,
Um, what to expect from a course? Well, on a course, we generally go into a bit of the history of
yeah.
crystal skulls, the mythology around them, the modern skulls, the ancient skulls,
Mm,
yeah, the legends and everything around it. Um, and then we'll teach you how to connect with the skull, see what elements the skull wishes to
mm,
work with, and how to utilize it in a healing, you using it for
yeah.
a healing on yourself, others, land, animals,
Mm,
the grids, like you said, all that we share in the course. We all also share how to connect our skulls and link them and activate the skulls.
I think that's really important.
Exactly, because yeah, linking them up with the skull consciousness, I think, is paramount. Anybody who really wants to go forward with this and get the most from it, their skull really needs to be activated and linked. So, um, yeah, so by the end of the course, people will be confident in, connecting with their skull. They know how we share a number of ways how to connect with it, and how to work with it. and they'll be confident moving forward that they know their skull, they know the name, the element, and they'll also know different ways of working.
Amazing.
There's lots that we share, and anybody that's been on our courses would validate that also.
Definitely.
But
Yeah. And there's
we
always,
haven't.
oh, sorry. There's always the surprises, isn't there? Because something new always downloads in every class that we don't expect.
That's right, but that's the fun of working with them, because
Yeah.
it's not just our consciousness.
Yeah.
Like I said, driving across the Severn Bridge, I'm
Yeah.
driving a car but I'm getting a download of a meditation that I need to teach them. Oh, this is new, so it's
Yeah.
always good fun. And yeah, we haven't set a date yet, but watch this space.
Yeah. Super
Um,
excited. We'll be looking at that soon, won't we?
yeah, and we haven't got time today to do a little meditation, but that would have been lovely if we could have
Mm.
squeezed it in. But
Yeah.
it'll have to wait till next time.
Yeah.
But
Brilliant.
yeah, be lovely to just share, that a quick meditation how to connect. But we're out of time this time.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
have to wait. But watch this space for dates, and Ella and I will, put something out on social media. Let people know
We
when
might
we're.
do it in Pembrokeshire, possibly, will we, Ashley?
Pembrokeshire sounds lovely. It's a really lovely sort of diamond energy out there. So
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we could go for Pembrokeshire. We'll have a little chat afterwards and see where we can,
yeah,
where we'll go. Yeah.
excellent.
So thank you, everybody. Thank you for supporting this podcast. Thank you for supporting Ashley and I. And do reach out either by WhatsApp or email or on any of the links below where you might find this on Apple Podcasts or whether it's on Spotify or on YouTube. And we really look forward to working with you either online or in person. Hopefully, we'll see you in person on the next Crystal Skull workshop. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.
Many blessings. Lots of love.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
It would help if I knew how to stop this. I love modern technology. Bear with
Is it
me.
up the top in meetings?
Yeah, I got it. Right. Cheerio, everybody.